We must confess our sins and cleanse our souls in order to go to heaven, Grace.
Confess! Repent! Repent your sins!
This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at is 2019's The Lodge, and I have to admit, I went into this with relatively, I wouldn't say low expectations, but certainly not high expectations either. It's directed by Veronika, Franz, and Sevarian, and I've seen one of their films prior, Good Night, Mommy, and that was interesting. I need to see it again. I saw it quite a while ago, but I don't recall disliking it. I don't recall also being particularly enamored of it either. But it wasn't a bad movie by any stretch. Though The Lodge generally shocked me, only because A, it is really, really good. And it describes itself as a psychological horror film, and it is. It lives up to its billing, in a sense. Let me explain what I mean. If you've seen posters and adverts for this movie, you probably think it has something to do with the supernatural, and in a sense it does. And yet conversely, it also doesn't. And this is a quality I really, really like about this movie. The filmmakers leave it up to the viewer to decide whether or not certain things are supernatural or not. I actually don't think it is. In fact, I think this movie has absolutely nothing to do with the supernatural at all. But it's shot in such a way that it's very much open to interpretation. And when I talk about how it's shot really cleverly. The film opens up on a dollhouse. And it's shot and lit in such a way that you can't really tell that it's a dollhouse. I mean, when I say dollhouse, I mean like a dollhouse. But it's so detailed that short of seeing it before, you will not pick out that this is a dollhouse at all. And it's such an important reference point because the entire movie works on that conceit in a sense that when they're in live action scenes, you can't tell, not really, if it's a dollhouse or not. It's shot in the same similar fashion. And events keep repeating themselves in the sense that you see a certain scenario depicted in the dollhouse, in the cabin or the lodge, the title. When you see it, it's designed after that toy house. So therefore, there's a sense of confusion, a sense of displacement when watching the movie because you're never quite sure, at least initially, what's being filmed. Many shots are done in this fashion, and it's really creepy and off-putting in the best possible way. So you're never really sure where you are from one moment to the next. Are we in an actual house? Or are we in the dollhouse? And it adds atmosphere. And speaking of atmosphere, the two directors excel at this. The movie is not what I would call slow, but it's not necessarily dynamic either. But it doesn't bore you because these two directors have such an eye for detail and nuance that it just draws you in. This movie is remarkable in that way. I mentioned earlier that it could be supernatural, and there are a lot of Christian references throughout the movie, particularly crucifixes, or a portrait of a saint. I want to say Virgin Mary, but I don't know that. I just know it's a saint. And you see this imagery throughout, so it implies, potentially, depending on how you look at it, that there's something indeed very supernatural going on. I don't think so myself. I can't tell you why I don't think this movie is supernatural. I think I'm going to hold that discussion for a later time. I really don't want to give this away. If you haven't seen The Lodge, check it out. It's a great movie. So for me to discuss it in the fashion that I really want to would mean I'd have to give away so much plot. I don't want to do that now. So I'm thinking of revisiting this with a part 2. Though for now, I have to say, you must see The Lodge. If you like horror, particularly slow burn horror, this is a must-see. This movie is so atmospheric. And I complimented the directors earlier, and there's one way in particular that they so deserve the praise. The music. The Lodge takes place in a very cold, snowy, remote location. The point being, you hear lots of noise, such as wind noise, the sound that doors are making, footsteps, things of that nature. And the movie uses that to its advantage. It has a soundtrack, but the soundtrack is very minimal. It comes in at certain points. It is by no means throughout most of the movie. And I so love that because soundtracks are often used by directors to manipulate. Now I know that's pretty much what movies do, and music. They bring about certain feelings and thoughts. It's, in a sense, manipulation. I get that. But the thing is, if you're telling a story worth telling, you don't have to necessarily have music that telegraphs what you're doing. This is something that really bothers me with a lot of movies. 1917, for instance, is a movie, and I'll review this probably sometime this week. It's a movie that really bugs me because the music is so throughout most of it that it distracts, at least it distracted me. With The Lodge, there's virtually no music. It builds atmosphere, it builds tension, and this is probably one of the most atmospheric movies that I've seen in, I want to say years, but I don't want to come off as hyperbolic. But nonetheless, I think it is. This movie is so atmospheric and is so tense. And it just works really well. It reminds me of other movies. It's not unique in a sense of something you haven't seen before. Not by any stretch. But the way the directors approach the subject matter gives it a power that few directors can mimic. As I mentioned earlier, I saw Goodbye Mommy by these directors, and from what I can recall, it had a similar feel as this movie, but this movie is light years beyond it. It is remarkable. It is breathtakingly tense and creepy at times, and it does this with no gore. There is no gore in this movie. And I am so glad for it because it doesn't need to be there. It's a character study and it's a fascinating one. If you have not seen The Lodge, as I've also mentioned, it's on Hulu. And take a look. This is really one of the best horror films I've seen in ages. It is that good. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. As usual, let me know what you think down below. And if you like this video, please consider a like or subscribe to my channel. And as I said, I'm going to revisit this movie at a future date with spoilers.